Tonight, Animal Man and Swamp Thing may have accidentally slept through the apocalypse. Justice League International might have completely forgotten that it was cancelled, and Dial H finally explains just what in the hell is going on in that series. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 48 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and we are finally in month 12. I know that if I just waited 4 more episodes I could just say, hey, we did it, we made a year, but I need my little milestones. They make me happy. So we are in the 12th month. We are going over all the 12th issues of these series and I could not be more happy. But why don't we go ahead and skip all the fanfare for now and talk about the comics coming out this week. This week we have 13 comics, including the number 12 issues of Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Red Lantern, Green Arrow, Justice League International, Stormwatch, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing. Additionally, we have the number 4 comics of Earth 2, GI Combat, World's Finest, and Dial H. All of that was in no particular order, though I do want to point out that this is a special start of event season because we are going to be starting in this week parts 1 and 2 of the prologue of Rot World with Animal Man and Swamp Thing. And then after the 0 issues, which will be coming out next month, we are going to be having events all the time for, as far as I can tell, the next 2 years. So get used to that. But not quite yet. We're still in the prologue of just the first one, so count your blessings now. Anyway, comics time. Let's get into that Rot World. Animal Man number 12, written by Jeff Lemire and Scott Snyder, art by Steve Pugh. This is part 1 of the prologue to the Rot World crossover / event. This issue picks up with Cliff, Animal Man's son, after he was attacked by the Rot in a previous issue, is very, very sick, and they're currently staying at the Swampwater Inn. Ellen is looking over him and is saying goodbye because she's going to go with Buddy and Maxine to go find Swamp Thing. And Buddy's like, hey, you could stay here with him. You don't have to come out there. And be like, no, my daughter is going out there with you. Clearly I am going to be there with. So Buddy's feeling bad about how his son was put in danger. And Ellen's mom steps up and is just like, hey, Buddy, look, here's the deal. I never liked you, clearly, but I know just from the way you look at my daughter and my grandchildren that you love them completely. So I know you're trying to do the right thing here. Just make them safe again. So they all start making their way out into the swamps. And Socks the cat is basically just walking them, leading them through, saying like, Swamp Thing, he's over here. I can feel it in the red. He's like, I thought that Swamp Thing was part of the green. And he's just like, no, you don't understand. All of the stuff, the green, the red, and the rot, they're all interconnected. Like, okay, if you reach into the red, Buddy, and you can feel a crocodile here in the swamp, well, that crocodile ate a bird, and that bird ate a seed. Therefore, that seed is part of that bird, which is part of that crocodile, which you can sense, right? And he's like, yeah, I can. It's like, cool. Now just reach through that, and you can feel where Alec Holland is. And he's like, oh, hey, yeah, I can see him. He's over there. So Maxine and Buddy start using their powers to run ahead as Ellen's just struggling to keep up. Until finally they come across Swamp Thing and Abigail Arcane, who are standing next to a portal into the Rot, and they're like, oh, we shouldn't go in there. And Buddy's like, actually, we definitely need to go in there, which was the end of Swamp Thing 11, I believe. And he says like, oh, you're Buddy Baker? Hey, yeah, no, I've felt you in the green before. He's like, yep, nope, we got a mission ahead of us, Swamp Thing. So cut back to Cliff, who's moaning in pain. The grandmother gets up to go get a wet washcloth, and when she comes back, he's gone. He's just not in bed anymore, and she's not sure where he went to. So back into the main, story, whatever you want to call it. More introductions are going on where basically they're just walking through everything that they've done in Animal Man over the past whatever. It's just like, oh yeah, I raised some animals from the dead. We went to the rot. There were hunters 3. We beat 2 of them in the red. Then one of them came back, had the body of whoever else. Yeah, it was a whole thing. So at that point, he's like, oh yeah, no, we also had run-ins with the rot over in Swamp Thing. So seems like we're here to fight the rot. And Ellen chimes in like, excuse me? No, we're here to get help for my son who's dying. And Buddy's like, the only way that he's going to get help is if we go and beat the rot, like, in its own home. Like, actually do this. Otherwise, he's going to stay sick. We've already beaten back the hunters and their avatar, apparently, in Swamp Thing. So we've got him on the ropes. We just got to knock him out. And Ellen's like, fine, whatever. Meanwhile, Maxine has been looking into the portal, and she sees a future where, like, everything is dead, and she sees Anton Arcane, to which Abby's like, oh, yeah, no, like, I see it too. He's the avatar of the rot, and also I have a connection. To which Ellen's like, oh, you're part of them? And she's like, no, I'm not part of that. Just shut up, Ellen. No one likes you here. So, at this point, Socks tells him, like, yeah, okay, the rot's essential, but it's growing out of control. You guys need to go in and take care of this. And Buddy says, like, Maxine, don't worry. I'll be back soon. Swamp Thing says goodbye to Abby. But they're like, okay, hold on. I'm going to take this vine from my body, and I'm just going to tie it around a tree up there. So that way we can always come back through the portal. Okay, good. That's what we're going to do. And he's like, all right, sounds good. So Swamp Thing grabs Buddy, and they jump in through the portal. And boom, they're gone. To which Abby then grabs a shotgun and says, all right, we're going to sit here and wait and make sure nothing ever severs this vine. So Buddy says what it feels like to jump into the rot, and he says, like, it's just terror and death, and it smells awful. Until finally, after what feels like forever falling, they hit the rot, like they're inside this disgusting, rotten-looking mess. We get a few panels of Cliff making his way down the road, and he just keeps on muttering to himself, Rot World is coming. And it seems like he comes across a being made entirely of flies. They don't actually show the being, though, so it's very interesting. But then we cut over to Maxine, who also is saying Rot World is coming, and says like, oh, something's going on. And as they look back at the portal, we see a whole bunch of little rotlings jump out of the liquid and start attacking the 3 women there. And they say, so it begins. And that is to be continued in Swamp Thing number 12. I liked it. I think it was very good. I know that this issue basically acted as the sum-up issue for both series. Like, I glanced over the Swamp Thing stuff, but they did say, like, yeah, no, I battled Seth, whatever I decided his name was as well, and their avatar of the rot. Like, stuff has been going on in both books. So this one is just like, okay, if you're planning on picking up the Rot World event, but you've only been reading one of the books for some reason, get this book, and it will inform you on what's happening in both of them. Perfectly reasonable as a book. It also did forward it in terms of it set the Cliff thing in motion. It introduced the idea of you can feel the green through the red, and like also the rot. Like, they're all interconnected. Everything can feel each other. I like all that. Solid read throughout. Art-wise, very good. I would not say it's its best artwork. I would still give that to some of Travel Foreman's crazier stuff, but Steve Pugh does a very good job here. Don't really have much to complain about, so I'm going to give this one an 8. I'm really enjoying it, and Prologue Part 2 is in Swamp Thing number 12. Swamp Thing number 12, written by Jeff Lemire and Scott Snyder, art by Marco Rudy. This is Rot World Prologue Part 2, following up after Animal Man number 12. And we immediately pick up with Swamp Thing and Animal Man arriving in the rot, and they're just feeling around, seeing what's going on around here. And they're like, oh man, like, this Rot World, it's not built out as like a plane, it's built out as like a mountain. Like, it goes deeper. We need to descend down if we're hoping to beat back the rot. But before they can do anything, they're attacked by a couple of, what are they called? Unmen. And like within 2 panels, they are just completely knocked out. And it's just like, oh, all right. That wasn't hard at all. Does this seem too easy to you? And he's like, no, this doesn't seem too easy at all. By the way, there's a tear in the floor. I think we can use that to get deeper. That's convenient. So meanwhile, back on the surface, Ellen, Maxine, and Abby are all being attacked by the rotlings, and Maxine's using some hard powers. Like, I didn't even know she had the powers yet. And Ellen is, of course, using her rot powers as well. Or, sorry, Abby is. Ellen is using a shotgun. And at this point, they're like, okay, these things are just keep on coming out. No matter how many we take out, they keep on coming through the portal. We got to seal up the portal. To which, that's the only escape for Buddy and Alec. So as long as the vine that Alec was protruding through the portal still stays good, then they can find their way through. Like, that's not going to be an issue. So Abby reaches down, uses her rot powers, and seals up the portal, only leaving enough of a hole for Alec's vine. So, cut back down to the two boys. They are looking down through the hole in the rot, and they jump down to a bone-made staircase. But Buddy ends up tripping, and it's discovered he doesn't have his powers. Like, he's just a normal guy down here. And they're like, Alex just tells him, like, you don't have your... Dude, we should turn back now if you don't have your powers. He's like, no. I got to be here for this. It's fine. I'll do what I can. So they're making their way, descending down this bone ladder deeper and deeper into the rot. We then cut over to back on the main surface, and basically Ellen's asking Abby, like, hey, you definitely have a connection to the rot, and I'm very distrustful. You also mentioned, like, your family was part of it. And she's like, yeah, my uncle, he was the avatar of the rot. But that doesn't really make any sense, though, because he died, and you shouldn't be able to use, like, dead is dead. Which, me personally, breaking the story here, I feel like the rot's whole thing is dead. So I don't understand why a dead avatar is even a thing. I feel like their avatars would all be dead. But regardless, yeah, you shouldn't be able to bring back a dead avatar, she makes note of. So they descend down the bone ladder and basically just making conversation of, like, man, this ladder goes on forever, and it is, like, eerily quiet down here. I have no idea what we're going to be facing onto. But then they get this feeling, and they're like, wait a minute, hold on, something else is on the ladder. And they look up the ladder, and they see Anton Arcane, who's like, hey guys, glad you could make it. You fell right into my trap. We knew that if we just opened up this portal, you idiots would jump in. So now I'm going to cut your vine. And he starts gnawing into it. And Buddy tells him, like, we have to stop. And he's like, nope, too late. He's too far up the ladder. I can't stop him. However, I can send a message through the vines to Abby. So he moves the vines around, and Abby sees them spell out her name and then wither. And the rest of the portal closes up. So Sox makes the point, like, okay, they're lost down there. Like, there's no way they'll find the portal back. Like, they're just gone. We need to now come up with a new plan, because they're definitely gone. And Abby is starting to feel a deeper, stronger connection to the rot. Like, they're making their big plan now. And she starts getting, like, symbols and markings on her face. And she talks to Sox and says, like, okay, we had this vision of the world. It was transformed by the rot. Like, there's only one way out of this. We have to kill the Parliament of the Rot. And Sox is like, yeah, great plan, but we have no idea where they are. To which Abby says, like, I know where they are. I don't know how I know. I feel like I've always just kind of known, but I know where they are. So we're going to have to go kill them. And Ellen just picks up Maxine and says, like, nope. Like, we're not getting involved with this. We just care about our own immediate family. The world can wither. It doesn't matter as long as my family's safe. So you can go kill the Parliament and Rot. We're just going to go do our own thing. So she picks up Maxine and leaves. And then back down in the bone ladder, Anton just basically explains that the whole plan was like, yeah, no, we knew that you thought that we were on the ropes. So we just played like, oh no, please don't attack us. And you guys just fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. So yeah, you guys are down here, and we're going to be ruling up there. Like, we're just going to go do that. Also, you know how I was a dead avatar? Well, it turns out, Alec, you also were a dead avatar. Like, you were dead. Alec Holland was dead. But the green cheated and revived you. And that means if they broke the rules, the rot could break the rules as well. So that's the whole reason I'm back. So they're just like, whatever. Like, we'll get up there and we'll stop you. There's nothing you can do to stop us for good. And he's just like, no, you don't understand. In the rot, time moves differently. You've been gone for a year, and we've been ruling it with no one to stop us. Bye. And they just he tosses them off the bone ladder, and they fall for what feels like an eternity until finally they hit ground. Buddy has his powers back. He can feel very, very faintly the red, and Alec also lands in a separate location. He can very faintly feel the green, but he's like, oh crap, he wasn't lying. It has been a whole year, and the entire world has just gone to hell as Swamp Thing wakes up to Poison Ivy holding a sword at his head, and Buddy wakes up at a zoo where everything has been decapitated. And that's where we leave off. Wow. I mean, I gotta give him credit, like the being gone a whole year thing, and just like everything's already, you missed the apocalypse. Hell of a start to an event of just, this is already post-apocalyptic. I'm loving it. It's an interesting concept. Yeah, no, I genuinely just enjoyed this all around. I really can't find much fault in it. My only real problem is that the Ellen Abbey stuff of like them sitting down and saying like, we have to go kill the Parliament and do all that. They made it look good panel wise, but it was definitely just like this major stopping point, because down in the rot, they didn't have much action at all. They were just kind of moving their way through. So all the action was up top. But then once the thing sealed up, they're just like, okay, let's talk this through. What's our next plan of action? Necessary, of course. Poorly done, not at all. It just felt like, okay, all of a sudden we're slamming on the brakes just because we don't know what we're going to do next, and we need to talk that through. I don't know why it bothered me, but it was just a little itty-bitty thing. So yeah, from this point on, the story's splitting into two separate stories. We're going to have the Green Kingdom and the Red Kingdom, where Swamp Thing will focus on the Green Kingdom and Animal Man the Red Kingdom. So that'll go on for like, I think 4 issues until issue 18, and then they'll remerge. So that's going to be Rot World. For this issue in particular, I'll go ahead and give it an 8. I think it is very well done. I think it's an interesting start up to the story to set it already in the post-apocalypse. I'm super pumped to see where it goes. So, I mean, it's done its job well of leading into the event and getting me pumped for it. So, 8 for this, and I'm looking forward to Rot World. Detective Comics number 12, written and art by Tony S. Daniel. Last issue we left off with the whole reveal of Hugh Martyr is Mr. Toxic, or at least he's clones of him, and then Batman got attacked by some goop. This issue, Batman's still being attacked by the goop, and he does a whole thing where he like... okay, here's the thing. I say it's goop, it's drawn to look like goop, but they keep on saying that it's like something you breathe, so maybe it's gaseous. I'm not sure. But regardless, he very quickly reasons out, like, okay, I need to set this thing on fire in order to stop it. So he sets it on fire. And then Alfred walks in like, hey, man, everything cool? And he explains out that the antidote soaked up the chemicals like a sponge, which if that's the antidote, I'm a bit confused. But regardless, Batman then reveals, like, yeah, no, setting on fire was kind of just a last ditch. I was about to die there. Anyway, back to business. So we go back to Dunhill Laboratories where all those, like, people were killed or whatever. And some dude shows up, an inspector, talking to the professor that Batman talked to last issue. And it's basically saying, like, hey, we've got your back, now you got ours, okay? And he's like, yes, thank you for my help. Or, thank you for your help, I'll do whatever. And then, all at once, Mr. Toxic shows up and tells him, like, hey, I'm here for you. You're the only one who can help save me. So, come on. And, you know, he objects, but they take him anyway. So then we get Batman, who they've fixed the thumb drive that other professor gave him, and we just get the full explanation. Like on 2 pages, it's just the whole thing of Hugh Martyr had some sort of illness, and it was driving him to insanity, and so he thought, hey, I'll throw myself into a particle accelerator. That'll fix me. But it didn't. And so he made some clones and stuff that he was able to test on, but they were all short-lived, and the professor was basically just trying to help him, but of course he was asking for more and more ridiculous things that could like hurt people, including himself. So Yeah, really, it doesn't do anything else, but it just says here his body absorbed the radiation and is living off of it. It's only a matter of time before he becomes a walking atomic bomb. So that's his threat. Honestly, I didn't feel like it was that clear beforehand, but regardless, he's an atomic bomb and he has a bunch of clones. Cloning is not in his power set, though. That's just being a scientist. So Batman's driving around town trying to find him. Meanwhile, we see that, the big reveal of, the clone that was picked up from the coroner's office is really, really deteriorating now, but he was also the original, and the person in the Mr. Toxic suit was actually a clone, but like a really good one. So sure. Anyway, Alfred finally gets a hit on some extremely high power surges, so Batman parks the Batmobile, gets out, and then turns on a jetpack and starts flying to the laboratory where it is. So they're about to start up the experiment. The professor's like, I shouldn't do it. This isn't right. And he's like, do it, Professor. You have no choice. And then Batman busts in saying, don't do it, Professor. But the professor already did it. So something happens where it looks like they're merging together into one disgusting blob thing. And he's like, it's just like I saw in the Batcave. So then Batman comes up and he realizes Hugh is inside or has been turned into this weird genetic abomination. And he was like, help me, Batman, please. So then Batman fires off a batarang or something that has the antidote in it, of which he's able to free Hugh from the inside of this big blob of goop. And he explains it. It neutralizes the whatever. It's just magic, and then he's safe. So he puts Hugh back into his containment suit, and he's like, Batman, what did you do? And he's like, something I hope I won't regret. I saved your life. As he drags Hugh away. That's it. That's the issue. Remember when this arc opened up with a bunch of Batman imposters, and they were all just being vaporized into goop? And then we got into cloning and particle accelerators and atomic energy. This was a very confusing arc in general. There was a lot of spinning plates, and I can't help but feel like a few got dropped. It was interesting that they brought back Hugh Martyr, who I believe was in issue 1 or 2, so good on them for going that far back, but I really don't feel like they had a thing going on here yet. They barely set him up, and then all of a sudden they were like, no, he was actually crazy and driven mad with the promise of a cure. That's fine, I guess. That's if you want to go that route, but it just seemed like it wasn't set up in any way whatsoever. So yeah, overall, I give this particular issue probably what I would give the arc is no. I give this issue a 6, but I think I'd give the arc a 5. I'm not entirely sure what was what did we even what was Batman doing during this? I feel like the end result here that was getting across was Batman was oh, maybe I don't have to save everyone, but then he realizes that he does. But in the same vein, what? Why was he talking about regretting saving Hugh? I don't know. I don't get it. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. It was just a silly little story. So, 6. Batwing number 12, written by Judd, Winick, art by Marcus Toe. Last issue we left off with Penguin selling a nuke to Lord Battle, Lord Battle knocking out Mateus, and Batwing coming in for a fight. And then this issue picks up some indeterminate amount of time later, where Batwing is working with Nightwing and the entire Justice League International to fight off Lord Battle's crew. And it ain't going well. It's honestly not. So, flashback, we see Batwing laying out the plan. He says, all right, so Lord Battle killed Mateus' whole family and then planned to take him hostage so that he can get leverage or something like that. But regardless of all of that, none of it's important because he has a nuke. And that's kind of the biggest deal. And Booster immediately pipes up hey, we aren't exactly sanctioned by the UN in our own book. Should we really be starting this sort of international incident? And Batwing goes, Yeah. So they're all in, I suppose. And so they make their way towards the nation of Tundi. Batman is back at home, and their entire goal is that they need to figure out where this nuclear bomb is. So they are going in to scramble the satellite shielding technology or something like that so that they can get some actual like view on the ground there. So they go about starting that. And August General makes some conversation with Batwing like, hey, that guy who was captured, doesn't he work with Batman Incorporated? Like, isn't he your friend? And Batwing goes like, yeah, but he's not the priority right now. So we cut over to Mateus, and he's just waking up from a coma because he was shot by Lord Battle last issue. And Lord Battle basically tells him, like, yeah, I'm going to use you as leverage, and blah, 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 a whole bunch of evil villain speak. We're wrapping it up with him telling him, like, look, I am one with this land, and it is one with me. So everyone gets their scramblers up, and as soon as they, like, start it, they're immediately jumped by the three, like, generals that Lord Battle has, and they all have names. Neith, and the Fallen, and Striker. They honestly are completely unimportant to the story, but they exist. So anyway, battle starts breaking out, and they just have to wait long enough for them to get the info they need. And Batman points out, like, hey, there's an island or something. Like, there's something out in the jungle that has a massive structure, and it has no reason to be there, so clearly that must be where the nukes are. And Batwing's about to fly off to go deal with it, but then Lord Battle shows up. And in no time at all, somehow, everyone who is on different sides of this small country have made their way to battle Lord Battle. And apparently, according to Batwing, he's probably able to go 3 rounds with, like, Superman. Like, he is superhumanly powered. But regardless, they're all putting up a fight trying to take him down. So then Mateus, he's all weak in his hospital bed, and he calls over to an orderly, and the orderly's like, what do you want, old man? And Mateus just knocks him out, steals his cell phone, and calls Batwing. And he's like, hey, here's the deal. Because of stuff that the reader was not privy to, where before him taking over, like, the nation or whatever, he was just a normal man based off all records. It's reasonable to believe that the reason that he stays in the country and locks it down so hard is because his power is directly tied to the country. So if he's like taken out of the country, he'll lose his powers. And Batwing just immediately grabs him, lifts him up, and hauls him outside the borders of the country. And as soon as they do, he starts withering in strength, and all of, like, his generals and the forests and everything about the country all start withering as well. And Lord Battle's like, oh, please, you can't take me from my country, please. It's nothing without me, and I'm nothing without it. Please, I'll do anything. To which he's like, okay, we'll make a deal. So they allow him to be held as a prisoner within his own country. And if he ever does anything again, then they'll definitely lay the hammer down. But regardless, they were able to get the nuke from him. So then we see Mateus. He's recovering, and he's talking with David, and they're just like, yeah, okay, well, I don't like the fact that he still technically has his powers, but at least we managed to survive that. And David's like, hey, your whole family died. Are you sure you're cool with that? And he's like, don't worry, you're my family, David. And the track plays, and the music plays him out. But then we get one last page of the next villain, where it's some big-ass guy, and he's being told by an underling, like, hey, so the United Nations are seizing control of Tundi, and, it's all going according to your plan, sir. And he's like, yes, it's moving faster than I anticipated, but no matter. None will stand in the way of King Shadow. Which, after Lord Battle, feels like there's, like, almost like a Power Rangers sort of theming here with names, where it's like, we're just on a monarchy sort of thing. Oh, yeah, you were the Lord? Well, here's the King, and the next step's going to be the Emperor, and it's just going to keep going. That being said, I did like this. I think it was fine. My only critique, really, is that the whole reveal that Lord Battle was tied to the land is something that the reader wasn't privy to. Like, we weren't told at any point that he was just a normal man before suddenly gaining this strength. Like, that was revealed to us as Matu revealed it to us. So I know this wasn't supposed to be like a mystery sort of story. It's a nuke. Like, clearly that's just action, and that's fine. I'm not really that angry about it. It's a good enough story, but that is my one real critique. Art-wise, everything's fine. Marcus To does a fine job on everything. Not amazing, fantastic, but also certainly it gets like the feel of battle down right. I know where all the characters like sizes are to each other, so yeah, it's good. Overall, though, I would go ahead and give this one I'll give it a 6.5. It's good. It's overall just a good enough read, but it's not, anything super amazing. It just kind of, especially because it was just, 2-3 issues, after that whole long massacre arc, it kind of feels like, oh, okay, we just kind of needed an in-between space here. And especially pulling in the JLI out of nowhere. I know Batwing has been in their book, so it makes sense there's some crossover, but I don't know, it just felt a little bit weird that they were just like, hey, yeah, we're here now. Okay, bye. Action Comics number 12, written by Grant Morrison, art by Rags Morales, Cafu, and Brad Walker. Last issue, a whole lot happened, and this is equally as dense, if not more so. So just quickly getting into it, we have Superman going through a mental flashback / flash forward thing where he's like, oh, I'm married to Lois Lane. Wait a minute, that's not right. Why would we be married? And then she's like, no, you're not married to me. I'm dying right in front of you. And then he snaps out of it and realizes he's being attacked by a whole bunch of civilians being controlled by this weird spaceman thing who's come for Lois's niece, Susie, I think. I don't know. Regardless, he's like, oh, Lois, no, you're critically injured and you're going to die soon. But hold on, I'll be right there. And Susie is also like, hey, my Aunt Lois is dying, space guy. Can we, I don't know, do anything to stop this? And he's like, no, your purpose is bigger than her. Come, we must go. So she jumps after Lois, trying to stop her from feeling any pain. And apparently because of her weird Neo-Sapien powers, she can just do that. And then Superman's trying to not only fight against this guy, but also protect all the people who were previously just hurting him because they were being controlled by him. So anyway, Susie steps up. And she's like, hey, mister, my Aunt Lois is hurt, and I'm not going nowhere unless you can help me. And she's like, dude, look, she's going to die in like 30 minutes. It doesn't matter. We got to go. Here, let me show you my past. And we see how he was born, and he had special powers, and then his mom died, and then his dad never forgave him. So then we have Superman stepping up and being like, wait a minute. When you invaded my mind, I invaded your mind, and I found out all that stuff about you. You are Adam Blake, the original Superman that nobody remembers, which, okay, sure. But regardless, they find out that he went and ran away from home because his dad kicked him out, and then he was stopped by a bunch of crazy-looking meatball aliens called the Ort kind, who literally show up and say, be not afraid. So I guess they're angels. Anyway, so they turned him into this crazy strong thing so that he can help save other Neo-Sapiens. And he just kind of blasts Superman away. And Susie's like, oh, I don't think you should have done that. Can I do that? So at this point, we take a break and we go to the firemen. And remember that Superman was posing as a fireman named Johnny Clark. And they're like, oh my God, so many people here are dead, including Johnny Clark. He must have been vaporized in the ensuing battle. Poor Johnny. So that's all we get of that. Then Superman stands up. He's all pissed off that he was just thrown through a building. And then he's like, all right, here's the deal. You've been reading my mind in order to predict my stuff. But what if I don't even think about it? What if I just act on instinct? What you going to do then? And then he starts attacking on instinct, and it turns out Blake is unable to do anything. And he's like, are you crazy? He's just managing to fight, not control Superman, but just like fight by like disassembling cars that he's about to be hit with and whatever else. And finally, Susie steps in. She's just like, stop hurting Superman. And she blinds Adam. And Adam's like, you don't understand. All of you are going to die. I was just trying to save the best of you. And then he teleports out or something. Went back to his spaceship. And so they're like, okay, that's done. We still need to save Lois. So Superman picks up Lois, delivers her to the operating room, and the doctors are like, I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do. Operating on her would take hours. That's more time than she has. And Superman's like, okay, hold on. So he runs down to the medical library, reads every single book on medicine, and then comes back and says, I'm ready to operate. And he does. And they're like, do you need a scalpel, Superman? He's like, nah, I'll just use my thumbnail. And he uses heat vision to cauterize the wounds or whatever. And overall, I want to see if I can get a clock on here. Overall, it takes about 3 minutes for him to completely fix like shattered ribs and many other things. And she wakes up and he's like, yes, Miss Lane, you're safe now. Everything's cool. So, yeah, that's that. Then we get the epilogue sort of stuff. Superman has apparently just been living in, like, empty offices because he can just jump up to him, no problem. And Batman steps up and talks to him and says, like, here's the deal. You asked me last issue whether or not it was a mistake to kill Clark Kent. I found a bunch of evidence that Clark Kent actually did a lot of good with his reporting and whatnot. And he, like, passes Clark a thumb drive, to which Clark just looks at it with some sort of vision, and then he just knows what's on it, because sure. And so Batman basically tells him, like, yeah, bring back Clark Kent. Like, it's definitely important. So then Clark goes and talks to his old landlady, and the landlady knows a secret, so he's basically like, maybe I just say, like, Superman saved me? And it's like, dude, your friends had a funeral. Like, they grieved for you. That's not... Oh, you're making things so difficult. Okay, fine. Here's the deal. I'll make it so nobody remembers that Clark Kent died. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she starts going on and on about it. But basically what it comes down to is that the landlady, I want to see what her name is here. Her name is Nixligspitlins. And she was a lover or she loved Mixus Spitlick, and they're all fifth dimensional imps. That's the thing. They're all existing beyond this dimension. So she starts warping reality, and I guess she changes it so that nobody even remembers that Clark Kent died. Also, she says that there's a great danger of Lord Vindictivix, who then we cut to the bedroom of Susie, and we see her just sleeping in bed, and then at the foot of her bed, that weird little diminutive man shows up. And I'm just going to spoil it. I'm pretty sure he's Vindictivix. So, yeah, that's that. It's dense. It's very dense. It's like, okay, we did all this in like 3 issues. Honestly, when did we kill off? We killed off him like 3 issues ago, yeah? So this whole arc I would consider, even though the Hunter was in there, I still consider that to be part of this arc. It's not bad. I mean, I don't have a good way to judge this. Like, it's not really action. It's not really mystery. It's just a story. And it's not a bad story being told, but it is so just... It feels like it's going for so grand, and yet it feels so small at the same time. Where it's like... this whole thing of the neo-humans or neo-sapiens and these other things and the destruction of all of Earth. But then we're also just focusing on the identity of Clark Kent, who killed himself. And then we go to fifth dimensional imps, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how to judge this anymore. I will say it's good, and the art is fantastic. I didn't really pick up on the art change at all, so good on the fact that there were 3 separate artists, and I didn't really notice. I'll give this one I'll give it a 7. I think it's good, but honestly, it's just a 7, and I don't really know how to put into words why I think it's so good. So, yeah. Red Lanterns number 12, written by Peter Milligan, art by Miguel Sepulveda. Last issue we left off with Atrocitus being attacked by Abysmus and Bleeze probably being introduced to the Star Sapphires. So this issue picks up, it's just an extended fight scene between Abysmus and Atrocitus, where Abysmus is just like, you were so mean to me for so long, and now I'm finally getting my revenge. And we have the Dexstar jumping in the background, trying to help in the fight, but ultimately not doing much of anything. And basically, Abysmus is just pissed off the entire time of how Atrocitus, all his rage, all his anger, in the end, it was like completely pointless. Like, he just wants Atrocitus to admit all of it was for nothing. And of course he won't. And using like the last of his energy from his ring, he sends out a distress signal out into deep space. And Atrocitus, like, or Abysmus is like, that's all you got? All right, whatever. So then we cut to Rancor, who is still floating among the bodies of the Red Lanterns, and he's like, boy, if only I had become a monster sooner. If only I could have embraced rage more like Atrocitus. But I'm still just a scared little human. But then he sees Atrocitus' distress signal. And then we get glimpses of, like, Red Lanterns across the universe, like, being attacked by the people that they're supposed to be punishing. Until we finally get to Bleeze and the Star Sapphires. And Fatality's like, hey, Bleeze, join us. Like, you have love in your heart. And she doesn't directly say join us. She just keeps on like saying that you have love inside of you. It's more powerful than rage. And then Zilius Zox, who's standing there, is like, hey, Bleeze, they're trying to get you to join. And Bleeze is like, nah, that's not what's happening. And then Zilius is like, hey, you're a babe. Clearly they want you. So they officially just give her an offer, and she looks very, very tempted. Cut back to Atrocitus, who finally is still fighting as Rancor arrives, and Abysmus is like, okay, you have, like, the Red Lanterns are still dying. You're still not a threat to me. To which point Rancor pulls out one of his constructs, and it scares Abysmus enough that he realizes that his rage for Atrocitus is what's been powering him. So he's like, oh no, I'm the bad guy. So then Atrocitus finally gets the upper hand, and Abysmus is just like, can you please just say, like, I'm sorry, as he's getting pummeled to death. And Atrocitus says no. So what he ends up doing is pulling out a seed that he left inside of Abysmus when he made him, called a blood seed. And the whole reason that he was looking for Abysmus was that this blood seed can, like, start back up the Red Lantern power battery. So that was the goal the whole time. So he's got his blood seed, and he tells Dexter, hey, here's your dinner. So they make their way back to Yzmolt, and before they started back up again, Rancor's like, hey, Atrocitus, are you sure, like, maybe you don't want to do the rage thing? Like, we could just let the rage die out here. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. All right. And so he throws in the blood seed, restarts the Lantern power battery, and immediately across the universe, all the Red Lanterns who were being attacked, they start charging up. They start going back on their attackers. Zilius breaks out of his restraints, and before Bleeze finally gets the full power, Fatality's like, real quick, are you sure? Like, we can do this right now. You just gotta go for love. And he's like, funny. The people who brutally attacked me, those Yellow Lanterns, they said they loved me when they did it. So at that point, she obliterates the ring and flies off back to the Red Lanterns. And then on Yzmolt, we see that the power battery is, like, stalling slightly. Yes, it restarted, but it's not quite at full strength. But then the Red Lanterns all start returning to the planet, and they're bringing blood sacrifices. So I guess that's good and what they need. And then we just get a big 2-page spread here of them just being like, all right, we're the Red Lanterns, we're fully back to power, and we will be doing the job that we said we'd be doing back in issue 1 of punishing the guilty. But before we leave off, we have a one-panel thing of Rancor thinking that he hears a voice inside of his ring saying, let me out. So there's that. And also, down underneath the blood-soaked ground of Yzmolt are apparently the original people, like the original survivors with Atrocitus from when his people were slaughtered. I guess that they've been just living underneath the planet, and now they're going to attack. They're called the Inversions. So that's a lot. I liked it. I think it was good. I don't know. It's perfectly, like, of course the Red Lanterns were going to be fine. Like, it wasn't ever up for debate that they were ever just going to be like, yeah, no, all the Red Lanterns are gone, and we're just going to have the Red Lanterns comic continuing on for however many more issues. But not looking at it from that meta perspective, it's it's still good. It's still setting up the thing. I think that the Bleeze thing doesn't work as well as the Atrocitus one. The Atrocitus one, I think, was strongest in terms of, his enemy fell into the same rage pattern that he did. Like, in the end, it is just a cycle of revenge, more or less. So I think that was saying something well. The Bleeze one, I get it. I see what they were going for, but really, I think that was just there of, like, didn't have anything to do with the moral high ground, really, of just like, no, you feel love and your heart bleeds. It's like, does she? That wasn't really there at all. It was more so of, you're a hot girl, and we're an entire core of hot girls. Huh? And to that point, it felt a little bit cheap. And then the Rancor thing, like, that wasn't even a plot. But I enjoyed the concepts they were doing enough throughout. I do remember that originally this was a whole thing of Krona's body disappearing, so it kind of went off the rails into a totally different direction, but I get that was just the inciting incident. So overall, for this issue, I'm going to go ahead and say I'll give it a 7. I think art-wise is also just fantastic. They really do a good job with just showing like the grotesque, like the blood sacrifice and everything like that, and the shadowing. All of it looks very good. And story-wise, while solid, is maybe not a huge, amazing thing. But overall, 7 on average. Feeling pretty good about it. Green Arrow number 12, written by Nocenti, art by Harvey, Tolibao. Last issue left off with a whole thing of Green Arrow is in China trying to get his company back, but he has to trade off some facial recognition tech in order to do it, and he don't want to do it. Anyway, he gets attacked, and this issue just picks up there with him just beating up the henchman, but also kind of losing a bit. It's honestly, like the first half of this entire issue, it's like, I'm winning, but I'm also losing. And I have to do this, but I also have to do that. And I'm never going to do this, but I will definitely do this. And it's constantly bouncing back and forth between these opposite poles, and it just can't make up its mind. So anyway, the guy that he's trying to make the deal with, his name is Fang. Fang puts on this weird costume that has a bunch of false faces or whatever. And he cuts Green Arrow's tie because he's just in a business suit, and apparently that is the greatest insult, as we will find later on. But regardless, he has these false faces, and he just basically tells Green Arrow, look, I'm letting you leave because you came into China without, like, anyone knowing. No one knows you're here. Therefore, you won't be able to leave as easily. I'll make sure of that. And you're going to end up giving me that tech whether you want to or not. So Green Arrow just leaves. He hops in the car with Jimmy Crew, who is the guy who flew him in the first place. And why they can't leave here, like, I don't know. They don't say why. They just say, like, oh, well, I guess we just have to stay and deal with this. And then they have an extended conversation of, like, China, like, really sucks. But at the same time, it has some cool things. But it also, like, sucks. I don't know whether we're pro or against China in this comic. It seems against, just by the general gist of it. But they get to a point where Oliver's like, okay, Jimmy, you're cool and all, but I'm just going to go my own way. And Jimmy's like, okay, I'm going to go talk to a local Chinese hero named Susie Ming, and maybe she can help us out. So immediately after Oliver gets out of the car, he's like, uh-oh, I'm got the feeling I'm going to get jumped in this neighborhood. To which he then correctly points out that there's a crazy woman cradling a baby, and he's like, oh, I hope that baby isn't a gun. And turns out it's not a gun. It's a baby doll. But the baby doll shoots some, like, knockout gas. And he sprays Green Arrow, and then he's put into a political prison where nobody knows where he is. And then he's like, oh, geez, they took all my tech I had on me, which was, like, quite a bit of tech. Hey, other random guys in this jail cell, what are you in for? And they're all in for, like, oh, I question the political standing of the Chinese party or whatever. And so Green Arrow's like, cool, I'm going to break out of here. Tell them to bring me that gun because it actually has a pretty woman in it. And he turns on a hologram of this, like, half-naked woman and then uses it as a gun. He doesn't fire the gun. Instead, he fires a small crossbow that he also got access to, which genuinely I have no idea how he managed to do that. But regardless, He breaks out of the prison. Everyone else seemingly goes free. And then we just leave them. Like, they are given names. They lay out their backstories. And maybe they'll come back again. But I don't think so. And I don't care to find out. So then we cut over to Jimmy talking to Susie Ming. And Susie's like, hey, what do you know about Oliver Queen? And it's like, oh, you'll hate Oliver Queen. He's a dick. And it's like, oh, well, what about this Green Arrow guy? And it's like, oh, you'll hate Green Arrow. He's a dick. And then Susie's like, all right, well, I guess I'll help you out with your issue with that Jimmy, or that Fang guy that you're having problems with. So that happens. And then we get the most confounding 2 pages of my entire life. I can't even. So she says she'll help. Then we cut to Jin Fang's house, where there is a collection of either children or very, very short men and women. Genuinely cannot tell based off of Tolibao's art. But they're looking at some graves, and then all of a sudden, the people inside the graves come out after they say, like, the most random sentences. Like, I can't even begin. It's who are they? Grandma and Grandpa, Phoenix and Monkey. What are their homes? Rocks, no doors, and the hole, a pocket, a cavity, a bed, another door. I don't know what's going on. I am genuinely lost here. But regardless, some weird ghost zombies come out, and then they fly up into the air and attack Susie Ming and Green Arrow, who I guess were already here, despite us not seeing that at all. End of issue. It's not good. That's about all I can put. Like, what? I don't even know what happened here. I get the general vibe of, like, okay, he can't sell his tech to this person because they'll do bad things. But, like, what was everything else in that issue? Genuinely, I have no idea what happened. So, I can't even begin to critique it. Like, all I can critique it is that it did nothing to tell me what was going on. I wish I could say more, but I am honestly dumbfounded by the fact of, hey, give me that gun, there's a half-naked woman hologram for some reason, and then I'm just going to attack you. I don't get it. Am I just out of the joke? Okay, it's a 2.5, and the only reason I even give it that much is, at least, unlike the previous arc with the King Lear guy, at least I can tell that this one is following a linear path. Like, I can tell this event led to this event. Genuinely didn't even get that from that one. But then this last 2 pages, like, completely throws that out the window. Because I feel like it came from a different comic. I genuinely feel like I just picked up some other 2 pages, and all of a sudden there's just zombie Japanese or Chinese ghosts. Yeah. 2.5. Earth 2, number 4, written by James Robinson, art by Nicholas Scott and Eduardo Pansica. Last issue left off with Solomon Grundy showing up as a threat, and just to be honest, he is an avatar of the gray, whereas Green Lantern is, of course, avatar of the green. So this issue picks up with an explosion with the face of a man, and I think that it's based off the following 2 pages. We see that it was in New Guinea, I think back during the apocalypse, like, war thing. And we see a bunch of soldiers come in afterwards, and they're like, oh boy, something crazy happened here. Oh, I wonder what it could be. And then they find this naked man inside of a giant, like, handprint on the ground, and they're like, oh, call it in. We found something big. And now 5 years later, we see that the man in question was Captain Pratt, who is it's the Atom. They just say his name is the Atom. So I believe his powers are just growing and shrinking. So I don't know what that explosion was, but maybe he has explosive powers too. I don't know. We get back to him later. But anyway, he's ready to deploy against Solomon Grundy, and he's jumping out of a jet fighter in order to do it. And the guy inside the jet plane is like, are you ready for your big debut, sir? And he's like, this is my first rodeo. Pull the lever. Let me jump. So then we go down to Grundy, and he's just throwing around stuff around DC, looking for the Jade Warrior, because that's the big one he's got to fight. Cut back to Flash and Hawkgirl, who are basically seeing everything wilt and wither around them, and they're like, hey, Hawkgirl, is this you? Are you causing this? And she's like, no, maybe it's you. Maybe you're running fast causes. And he's like, it might be. I genuinely have no idea if my powers do this. And she's like, no, hold on. I can sense it. It's in that general direction over there. Hey, if I hold on to you, am I going to be ripped apart from you running quickly? And he's like, I genuinely have no idea how my powers work, so hang on tight. And then she does, and he runs, and she's fine. So then we go to Alan Scott, who also knows what's going on. He can sense it, and he's like, all right, there's something going on in America, in D.C. I need to get there now. And it's all this superheroing this soon is almost enough to take my mind off the crash that robbed me of my fiance. Oh, I guess I'm not quite over that yet. So then we see a bunch of officers are shooting at Grundy, and he's having none of it. He just immediately picks them all up in his like weird tendril things. And as he's about to kill them, Flash and Hawkgirl come in, and they just start attacking Grundy. And they do like some pretty big like bashes to the skull that would seemingly kill him, but he just regenerates. To which Hawkgirl immediately says like, okay, you don't know how to fight, and this guy can regenerate. So I need you to just go around and clean up civilians, and I'll handle the fight. To which Flash is like, you just said that like you can't beat him yourself. Like earlier, you said it was too much. And he's like, yeah, well, you genuinely will just be a hindrance to me, so get out of here. So Hawkgirl puts up a good fight, but immediately Grundy gets the upper hand and like grabs her by the throat. And at that point, Green Lantern comes in, bashes him in the head, and of course he regenerates. But now he's like, of course, my one enemy here. You represent the green, I represent the gray. We must fight. And at that point, we see Flash is picking up the civilians. And he passes by a television that's reporting on the couple that he rescued like 2 issues ago. And the couple's like, yeah, we didn't catch his name, but I think he said The Flash. And he's like, that's a pretty good name. I think I'll use that. So then we see the jet flying overhead as the fight rages on. And at that point, Captain Pratt, he jumps out. He uses his atom powers to turn really big. And he just lands on Grundy and like completely crushes him. And he's like, all right, I did it. I saved the day. Oh, hey, Hawkgirl, you know you're still wanted by the World Army Council, right? And she's like, go to hell. And he's like, I have my orders. And he just grabs Hawkgirl out of the air, turns to Flash and Green Lantern and says like, hey, I'm legally obligated to do this, so don't try to fight me. And that's where we leave off, is him standing huge over top of them, on top of Grundy's quote-unquote corpse, and saying, don't fight me. I mean, it's good. It's solid. It's not doing anything too big yet. I feel like, here's the thing. During this same week, we have the Animal Man Swamp Thing crossover going on with The Rot. And to now have Grundy come in and also be representative of The Rot just feels a little bit, I don't know. Because it's clearly not tying into that, it just feels not as impactful. And that's nothing to say about the comic on its own. If you're just reading the comic and have no sense of like time for it, I'm sure it would be fine. But just because of how I read it, where we've had this huge setup for a past year now of The Rot, it's just all of a sudden this guy coming in being like, oh, now I'm super strong as well. It's like, okay, but like, you didn't build up to that. So a little bit, I mean, he's interesting. He's a cool enough Grundy, I guess. He does look very Xenobite-y, but whatever. So writing-wise, it's probably like a high 6, 6.5. Art-wise, again, high 6, 6.5. Nothing's just standing out. That's the real thing I'm saying here. So overall, I'll give it a 6.5. It's good. It's fine. But for the first outing for this universe, it does feel a little bit lame. I wanted just a little bit more than that. So we'll see where it goes. World's Finest number 4, written by Paul Levitz, art by George Perez and Kevin Maguire. Last issue left off with them fighting back in Ultra Huge, whatever that guy's name was, Haku, and just punting him out into the ocean and saying, all right, what do we do now? So this issue shows what they do now. They fly out over the ocean to Tokyo, and they see, all right, so we got a few questions regarding this guy. For instance, why does his radiation hurt Supergirl or Power Girl? Why does the radiation not hurt Huntress? Because she is just human. And also, like, does he come from Apokolips? Is he a way back home? What's going on here? But before they can get anything answered, they see that they just so happened to punt him out in the ocean where a, like, weirdly huge amount of ships are. Like, there's at least 4 or 5 ships all just out here in, like, the very far out ocean. I'm not sure why, but regardless, he's going after a apparently U.S. military tanker. Or, sorry, right now he's going after an oil tanker, and it has a whole bunch of oil in it, and they're like, uh-oh, that'll cause, like, a natural disaster of untold proportions. Gotta stop that. So, Power Girl drops off Huntress on a small little tugboat that has Japanese workers, and it's just like, hey guys, we're the rescue now. We're going to go around, we're going to pick up as many survivors as we can. Let's go. And apparently there is a Geiger counter on this ship for whatever reason, and as Huntress gets close to it, like, she's given off a few radiation things, and she's like, well, as long as I'm okay now, like, I feel okay at the moment, so hopefully I don't have to deal with that. But anyway, we see that Karen's trying to deal with the oil spill that's already started, and she lifts up the oil tanker out of the water, but much as you try to, like, balance a huge thing on a tiny little surface area, it doesn't really work that way. So the oil tanker just splits where she is and dumps all of the oil into the ocean at once. And she's like, all right, well, I guess I can just burn it off myself. So she uses her heat vision and burns off all the oil. Then we get one of those flashback sequences again. This one's about 4 years ago in Rome. And the entire time, Karen's just being horny. Just like, oh boy, look at these hot Roman guys. And Helena's like, okay, that's enough, Karen. Anyway, we're here to talk. We need some money. And she apparently has been trying to figure out where to get some money from. And Karen is, of course, going to do the whole, what was it, Star Industries, whatever it was. So at this point, they start getting hit on by a few guys. And the guys are like, oh, ladies, I'll show you how to have a good time. And bring them over to just this massive pile of cocaine. I cannot begin to overstate how much there is here. And so Karen just blows it all away, and the guy gets pissed and tries to backhand her, to which her hand gets broken. Then she picks up a car, and as everyone's like, oh God, she's way too powerful for us. Hey, stop messing with us, you crazy strong lady, or we're going to beat up your friend here. And then Helena's like, oh, okay, I see how this is going. So at that point, Karen, like, crushes the car, and Helena just immediately takes out all of the guys. And then we cut to Helena realizing, like, you know, I do need to stop stealing money from this world's Batman. And I can't remember if we ever got confirmation on this before, but this is direct confirmation that her mother from her world is Catwoman. So there's that. Regardless, she's like, well, I could always steal for it, but I don't know. That doesn't seem right either. But either way, I shouldn't be... She basically comes to the conclusion of, I should live in this world as if it's my own. I shouldn't be waiting, trying to find another way back home. If it doesn't look like it's going to happen, I should make the most of my time here. So, as much as she misses her old life, she is putting down roots here, at least. So then we go to the fight still, and we see that while Power Girl's burning everything off, and they're rescuing some survivors, Haku has made his way over to that American military ship I was talking about before. And they have, like, nuclear vessels on there, and so they start trying to fire off those missiles at Haku, and for some reason he doesn't want to absorb the radiation, so he just slaps away the missile and then deflects it over towards Tokyo, to which Karen's like, geez, I gotta go deal with that now. Goes and catches the missile, and of course as it blows up, it blows like a hole in the top of her outfit to look more like traditional Power Girl, because the artists just can't help themselves. But anyway, they realize, oh no, there are nuclear weapons aboard that ship. If Haku shouldn't be able to get those, or he'll become even more powerful. So Helena makes her way over to the ship and relays her plan to Karen, where they're just gonna let him have the nuke because they think if it explodes, it'll actually be too much for him and he'll dissipate. So they launch off the nuke into his mouth, it explodes, and he dissipates. And they're like, well, I'm glad that worked out because I didn't really have a plan B to it. And of course, he absorbed it, so there's no nuclear fallout either. So everything worked out fine. So at that point, the people on the military ship are like, you're definitely under arrest because you just launched one of our nukes. And Helena's like, yeah, that's cute. And she gets carried away by Karen. And they're like, we had all those questions at the beginning of the issue, and we didn't actually get any of them answered. Oh, well, until next time. And that's just where we leave off. I genuinely don't know if we're getting more to that or not, but that's where we are. It was good. I don't dislike it in any means. I think I said this at issue 2, is that it didn't feel like a very strong start. It felt like a very, third arc sort of thing. This wasn't they took out a giant radioactive man who was terrorizing Tokyo. In concept, that sounds like a big start. But when you really get down to it, this guy was just going around eating, he wasn't even that evil. He was just a force of nature. And at that, he seemed extremely easy to take care of just by them giving him more nuclear waste. I don't know. It just seemed especially with the constant flashbacks, it just didn't seem like a thing that needed to take 4 issues. I really felt like this was a 2-issue arc that they stretched out over 4 issues. So, I don't know. Not the strongest for me. Still fine, though. It's nothing offensively bad, but I would say I'd give it a 5.5. And I do have to criticize a little bit of it felt okay in the first issue, but as it gets further in and the flashbacks seem more and more irrelevant, the art change between the two definitely hits me a little bit harder. So, yeah, I'll give it a 5.5. I'm hoping for better moving on, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Justice League International number 12, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Aaron Lopresti. Last issue left off with pretty much the end of an arc, but we did have Lightweaver, a villain, dying in his brother's arms and then passing his powers on to his brother. This issue picks up and is basically just wrapping up that loose thread. So we're at a cemetery in Russia. We are obviously having the funeral of Rocket Red, who died 4 issues ago. And we have Batman dodging a whole bunch of Lightweaver's blasts. I'm just going to call the brother Lightweaver because he has the powers, and I forget his real name. So, yeah, Batman's jumping around, dodging all the shots there. And he's basically just trying to tell the brother, hey, we didn't kill your brother. He died because of a military strike because he was murdering people in, Washington, D.C. Your brother was a terrorist. And he died completely independent of us. And the brother's just shut up, you killed Malcolm, how dare you. So at this point, we get a little bit of a flashback, and we see the entire team is entering into the graveyard. Batman is hiding off in the shadows, doesn't want to be seen here. And they're basically just saying, man, Rocket Red died. We have to honor him. We had to skip the actual funeral, the state one, because we'd just be distractions if we were there, but we still have to pay our respects to our fallen comrade. And they Zoom call in Vixen and Ice, who are still in the hospital, and Fire's still in a coma. And they're like, hey, yeah, we're all here still, even after the UN shut us down. And Booster's doing the whole thing where it's man, I did everything they wanted. I saved the day these times, but they still shut us down, and now what? And August General's like, Booster, shut up. Just shut up, man. Rocket Red died for our cause. Clearly we're going to keep doing the Justice League thing. So let's just not pretend like we're not going to do it. We're just going to do it on our own terms. Booster's like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're not going to quit, just like Rocket Red didn't. And then Lightweaver steps out, or the brother does, and at that point, Batman's like, oh, I might need to come out of the shadows for this one, as he starts firing off his light powers at everybody and basically takes them all out for at least a little bit. So then Batman comes in, and we basically catch up with where we opened the comic, except now Batman has gotten the upper hand. He's throwing some technology at Lightweaver, which takes him out. And he's like, hey, your brother made all the wrong choices. He was an absolute dick. He was, as I said earlier, a terrorist. You do not have to become that. You can be better. Would your brother want you to make these choices with your life, or would he want you to be better? And at that point, the brother's like, I just wanted to avenge his memory. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. And then the rest of the JLI show up and they're like, hey, Batman, what are you doing here? Anyway, yeah, no, kid, we get it. You're grieving. We're all grieving. This has been a tough time for everybody. But don't be a terrorist. To which the kid's like, yeah, I see the error of my ways now. And they're like, cool. All right, we're not going to charge you with anything, so get out of here. And the kid just leaves. And then Booster chimes up and he's like, you know what? Now that that's settled, let's go ahead and make our team. We're not going to quit. We might have to meet at the local burger shop, though, because we don't have a base anymore. To which Batman chimes up. He's like, hey, I bought this facility in D.C. You can use it for whatever you want, but no more Bat characters are on Justice League International. Got it? And then Batwing, who's there, is like, yeah, no, I got my own book, so bye. And they're like, no, that's fine. Is everyone else staying on the team? And Omac raises his hand, and he's like, I only showed up so I could get fixed by Batman. And Batman's like, yeah, no. Just stay on the team for a while, and I promise you I will get to you. You are somewhere on the list. So then Booster turns to Guy and is like, hey, you've always had problems with the team. Are you going to be staying? And he's like, you know, Booster, you kind of made a good leader, so I guess I'll stay. And so Godiva takes Booster's hand because I guess they're dating now or something. And he's like, well, the future belongs to those who claim it. That's coming from a time traveler, so you know it's the truth. And then they're all headed off to Washington for their brand new adventures. And this is the last issue, save for the annual, coming out the end of the month. So I don't even know why we're doing that. I can understand tying up the loose thread of the Lightweaver thing. That makes total sense to me. Why are we introducing this new base? The book is over. We're not, we have the annual. Why are we setting up as if they're going to have more adventures? Okay, if they show up in other things, I can accept it then. But it really seems like they're trying to do, a pivot into a new era of the team. But, no. The book is done. Fire is still in a coma. I hope that gets resolved. That's the last little dangling plot thread I want to see resolved. So, yeah. It's okay. It's fine. I think my biggest issue is the fact of, while it does feel, it has a sense of finality to it, it also just opens up this new thing, and you're like, but, we know you're done. The book is over. The end. Save for the annual. That little asterisk is on this always. So, I don't know. I guess I can't judge it too harshly until I see the annual and see whether or not they're going to leave more plot threads dangling, but this one, it's fine. It's okay. My biggest qualm about it is that it is just kind of a necessary chapter. This didn't part me with any sort of emotional anything. It didn't do anything too huge. It was just yep, we had to go to the funeral of our friend because we kind of just forgot that happened and never actually dealt with it. So yeah, it was a necessary chapter, and by that standard, it was fine. But it wasn't anything great. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 6. Art by Aaron Lopresti, also perfectly fine. Occasionally a weird face, but for the most part, I followed the action. I followed the movement, everything, and some panels did look good. So yeah, just an average book all around. GI Combat number 4, written by J.T. Krul, art by Ariel Olivetti, a.k.a. The War That Time Forgot. Last issue we left off with Stevens seemingly falling to his death while fighting a dinosaur at the edge of a cliff. And yeah, this issue picks up with another flashback of Elliot and Stevens apparently just finishing up a bar fight where they came out the victors. And they're just talking to each other, just being like, man, it's so crazy. So sorry that. And hey, Elliot, you know I always got your back. And then Stevens is like, ditto. Or sorry, Elliot's like, ditto. So they drink to that. And then we see Elliot upset that he let Stevens fall off a cliff. And he starts making his way through the jungle some more. While he's just like, oh man, you had a family, you had a daughter, and I let you down. Oh, I feel awful. But he's making his way through the jungle, and he comes across some herbivores, and he's like, all right, cool, I can deal with herbivores, that's fine. But then you hear a roar off in the distance, and some more carnivorous ones show up. So he starts running his way out of the jungle, makes his way to some plains, and of course one of the carnivores follows him, so he starts unloading some shots on him, which I swear they said he was out of bullets before, but whatever. So one of the dinosaurs he takes out, he keeps on running through the jungle, comes through another one that like bats him down to the ground, and they get into a little bit of a fight, but he's like, see, you're so used to stuff running away from you, I bet you don't even know how to put up a good fight. So he gets out like some rope or some wire from his, I don't know what else to call it, but his utility belt. It's just a lot of like pouches and stuff on his belt. And he takes it off, jumps around on its neck, and strangles the dinosaur to death. And he's like, whew, all right, well, that was something. But then all of a sudden he hears a radio signal of, he's like, you can just hear like, oh, can anyone hear me? And he's like, yes, this is Barracuda, please. Who's there? Answer, come in. I'm on the beach, please. And as he looks out into the water, he sees a U.S. like naval battleship being pulled down into the depths of the ocean by a giant squid. And all of the life rafts that are coming off of it are being eaten by Leopleurodons. So at that point, he just looks at the water, falls to his knees, and goes like, well, that's it. I'm never going to go home. And he pictures his family hanging out with Steven's family and them sharing beers at the barbecue, and he's like, everything we're fighting for, this is just gone. We're never going to have any of it. And one of the life raft finally does make its way up to the island. And they're like, did you see that? There's Leopleurodons out in the water. And he's like, yeah, it's far worse on land, so we're going to have to get as far away from here as you know. So Elliot hops into the life raft, and they just drive back. They just immediately head out as far as they can from where they're at. And then the last page reveal here, we have a whole bunch of dinosaurs just at the watering hole. And we see a figure sneaking behind some trees. And out it jumps to attack one of them, stabs it through the neck with a spear. And it's Stevens. He survived. And he's like, oh, in order to survive here, you must adapt, improvise, overcome. So he's Bear Grylls now. Yeah, I mean, based off the fact that I always felt like Stevens was the main character of the book, especially by the fact that they only say his name twice over the course of all 4 issues, I never really felt like he was dead. That being said, I did peek ahead a little bit, got to issue 5 on this book, and they are still using Stevens. Like, that's not the end of the arc. We do still have more of War the Time Forgot. I think 5 is the last one, but still, that's very surprising to me that they didn't just end it here. Like, doesn't this seem like the sort of thing of like, okay, we wrapped up the Elliot story, but then like, oh, it turns out they left him behind, and he's become something more than a man. He's able to live off, and it's like, that seems like an ending. This issue felt like an ending, but there's another one, at least. So, it's fine. It's good. I don't really have that much more to say about it. It's just too short to really form a strong opinion on. Like, I don't feel like much of anything really happened here. He felt sad about his friend, he fought a dinosaur, and then he left the island. That is literally all that happened. And I'm not really cutting off anything else there. So, I'll give it a 6. That's the most I can really say about it. Maybe next issue could be interesting now that we're getting into a whole like tribal survival thing. But yeah, no, just in terms of following Elliot, who honestly, he didn't really compel me that much as a character throughout. So now we're getting more into Stevens, who again, as a character, didn't really compel me, but at least they're doing something with him. So we'll see what happens next issue. Stormwatch number 12, written by Peter Milligan, art by Will Conrad. Last issue was a totally different thing, as is a lot of these stories, so ignore it. This issue picks up with Jack Hawksmoor. He's in Paris, which has been attacked, or maybe an earthquake or something, but there is these weird, like, busts of Nefertiti's head just everywhere, and he has no idea what they're here for. And engineers like, okay, have you heard anything from Martian Manhunter? And he's like, who the heck is Martian Manhunter? So then we cut to in the Stormwatch HQ. Martian Manhunter is talking to Jenny Q, and she's basically just like saying, man, me and you, we're like two peas in a pod. We're both so weird. And Martian Manhunter's like, yeah, but you listen to like pop music the same way as any 12-year-old girl. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm still a 12-year-old girl. And at that point, he tries to sneak up on Jenny and grab her. And Jenny's like, what the heck's going on here? And basically, Martian Manhunter is trying to wipe all memory of himself from Jenny's mind, to which Jenny does not want to hear anything about it, like, because, you know, she's about to have her mind messed with. And randomly, they just start teleporting on, like, all these different planets through different times and stuff like that. And Martian Manhunter is just basically telling, like, Jenny, you need to calm down before you do something crazy. And at a certain point, they teleport into hyperspace where they're like, neither of us are going to live. You just need to let this happen. And he wipes her memory of Martian Manhunter, and then they both teleport back into Jenny's room. And she's like, I guess I was just listening to pop music like a normal 12-year-old girl. So then we have Engineer finding even more of these Nefertiti's busts, and they're appearing just all over the world. He's like, Apollo, do you have any idea what these things are for? And Apollo's messing around with him like, nope, no clue. He's like, all right, well, can you find Midnighter? So Midnighter's off beating up some random hoodlums who were collecting the bus, trying to get info out of them, but apparently they thought that the bus just were like containers for drugs or something like that, so they thought they could make a quick buck, but nobody could actually get inside of them. So, you know, false lead. And at a certain point here, Apollo's making fun of Midnighter's spiked chin thing on his costume, and it's like, yeah, okay. First off, there's a reason I have that, but second off, Martian Manhunter's here, and something's off about him. I can't quite place it. And Apollo's like, hey, don't worry about it. He's Martian Manhunter. He's not going to do anything. To which he immediately mind wipes Apollo, and then Midnighter and Martian Manhunter get into a fight. And he just phases through most of Midnighter's punches. But Midnighter deduces that if he punches him quick enough before he can phase out, right at the bridge of his nose, based off of his Martian physiology, it'll push a piece of bone back into his brain and kill him. To which he does, except that Martian Manhunter shape-shifted his brain out of the way of the bone spike when it came in. So he was able to survive. And he mind wipes Midnighter. Midnighter's like, I'll remember you one day and then I'm coming for you. And he's like, yeah, I doubt that. Anyway, stepping through a portal door, teleporting back. And then, for some reason, Midnighter recounts the story of why he needs the spike on his chin, which he was bound by his hands and legs and unable to do anything. He was about to have his throat sliced by, like, some drug lord, and then he used his spike chin to drive through the hand of the drug lord. And Apollo's like, oh, is that the whole reason why? Here, I thought you thought it was fashionable. Ha ha ha. So Martian Manhunter, who is supposed to be teleporting up to Stormwatch HQ, gets stuck in hyperspace for a little while and then gets summoned to the Shadow Lord's main, like, base, I guess you could call it. And there are three of them. Martian Manhunter's like, I thought there were four. And he's like, yeah, one of our guys got, like, missing. We don't know where he is. Anyway, you're not allowed to leave Stormwatch, Martian Manhunter. To which he's like, okay, but I have to because I do. And he does like some mind connection thing in order to find out where the other, like, that the Shadow Lord was attacked or something like that. And they're like, no, stop doing that. Anyway, no, you can't leave. You absolutely are a member of Stormwatch until death. That's how this works. That's how we stay secret. And he's like, I'm wiping everyone's memories. That's how you can trust me. Also, like, I need to do this because something like Stormwatch and whatever and Justice League, I don't know. He makes the justification of why he had to leave Justice League too. That something big is coming. So he makes a deal with the Shadow Lords, and it's secret. They just say like, oh, well, when the time comes, it'll be the very thing you fear most of all. So, yeah, there's some sort of deal. But anyway, Martian Manhunter comes back to HQ with the Nefertiti bust. And Engineer's like, I think these things are alien-made. I don't know. I genuinely have no idea why this is here, and it's pissing me off. Also, Martian Manhunter, look, I know that you're leading the team. That's why I let you mind wipe everybody. I know you need to mind wipe me too, but just do me a favor while you're out there. Keep an eye out for Harry, you know, the guy who betrayed us. See if the girl that he took. I forget her name, projectionist, I think. See if she's like a hostage or if, she's working with him. Just keep an eye out. Just keep doing that. And he's like, yep, nope, agreed. We'll do that. Bye. And so Angie gets mind wiped and Martian Manhunter is seemingly gone from the team. So then we cut to the Himalayas where a bunch of Nefertiti's busts are and Justice League International's looking over them. And they can't figure out anything about it either. But at this point, Stormwatch has figured that they're pretty much inert. But then we see down in Antarctica, Harry and Projectionist are down there. And they are working together. They're torturing the villain known as the Fox to open up a portal inside of his chest. And Projectionist is like, could you explain to me again why we use these Nefertiti busts? And he's like, it was just something random I found of an alien who really liked how Nefertiti looked. And so he made like thousands of busts of her. And then Stormwatch got a hold of them. So I just threw them out back into the world again. Anyway, we're putting a portal in Fox's chest so that I can gain the power of the Shadow Lords, fake that I am the missing Shadow Lord, and then rule the Shadow Lords from behind the shadowy screen. Therefore, also ruling Stormwatch. Ha 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 ha. And that's his evil plan. It's a lot. I don't understand why Martian Manhunter needs to leave. The most we get is something that Engineer says in here of, you've made sure that Stormwatch is concerned about the rise of teams like the Justice League. And then that's it. They just say, like, okay, and then you have to go. So I don't even know what we're doing here with Martian Manhunter, but it's an okay issue. It's not great. Art, I've never had a problem with this one. Same deal. Looks great. My only qualm with it is during the fight of Jenny Hugh and Martian Manhunter. Because they're just teleporting around and a lot of words are on the screen because Martian Manhunter is, like, talking Jenny down, it definitely doesn't flow that well. I have trouble figuring out like where we are and how things are going, but I think that's supposed to be like a frantic nature to the fight, so I don't hate it that much. Overall, 6.5, mainly because they do at least give Martian Manhunter a goodbye. Why they have to give him a goodbye here, I don't know, and I don't know if he'll be back, but it's at least a moment, even if it is a weird story to base it around with the Nefertiti heads. So yeah, I'll give it a 6.5, and honestly that feels a bit generous, but whatever. Dial H number 4, written by China Miéville, art by Mateus Santolucci. Last issue left off with Ex Nihilo summoning a weird abyss creature thing, and it is actually called Abyss. So this issue is the explanation issue. Like, all the confusion I've had for the last 3 issues are pretty much answered here wholesale. So I'm going to try to go in order. We'll see how well that works. So the squid recounts how forever, like for God knows how long, he was stuck just falling over and over again due to some sort of punishment. And finally, it stopped one day, and he finds out that the person who made his falling stop was Ex Nihilo, who was looking for his companion, a.k.a. Abyss, who they just summoned. And Abyss is standing over the bed of Nelson's friend, and immediately Ex Nihilo is like, oh, I bind you, you work for me now. But it doesn't work, and the Abyss is just straight up pissed off and angry at pretty much everyone there and starts attacking. Squid tries to stop it, but just gets holes blasted through him, seemingly killing him. So then we see Abyss is like ridiculously powerful, basically godlike in a lot of ways, but he's just able to knock out all the attacks that Nelson and, I'm blanking on the name, Mateus, that's it, are throwing at him. But then Mateus, as far as I can tell, throws a chair, which just causes it to pop out of existence briefly. So Ex Nihilo is super pissed that this happened. She knocks out Mateus and steals her dial. And then Squid steps in and knocks out Nelson, who, it makes it seem like he's about to get killed because he's hit with the ink, but turns out that it was actually fake, and he was just making it seem like he was killing Nelson. Also, reveal that Ex Nihilo is Dr. Wald, the doctor who was looking after Nelson's friend. Anyway, so Nelson He leaves. He still has his dial. Everyone thinks he's dead, but his dial is no longer working. So he makes his way back to Mateus' place, and he sees on the news that Abyss is just attacking jewelry stores, and he's making his way to a geological exhibit. Meanwhile, Manto is being held captive by Ex Nihilo and Squid, and Ex Nihilo is apparently what's called, I want to say, a nullomancer, in that she uses magic to control voids and nothingness, which is alright, but basically just trying to figure out like why she wasn't able to control the Abyss, why it's escaping, and she thinks that Manto and the dial has some way of controlling it, because apparently the dial users are the ones who banished Abyss in the first place. Meanwhile, Squid's there. He is desperately hurt, and he is very upset that Abyss is basically just going on a rampage and wants Ex Nihilo's help in order to try to just contain it, because we actually get the backstory. I'll get to it in a second, but Manto gets tortured by Ex Nihilo until finally she gives up answers on how to make the dial work. So Nelson's still watching the news, and he sees that a superhero of, I can't even tell the name of it, she's just got faucets. She's a water-based hero. Anyway, shows up to fight Abyss, and he thinks it's Manto, but Squid shows up to the apartment and says, like, yeah, we tortured her and got her home address. That's actually Ex Nihilo, who's trying to use the power of the dial and her nullomancy to control Abyss. And then we get the backstory of Abyss. So, apparently, on Squid's home planet, they, like, were able to capture and, like, wrangle up voids the same way that we wrangle cows, and they use them for things like transportation and whatnot. And he came across one void that was just smarter and better overall than all the other voids, and he taught it, and he bonded with it, and he used it for transportation and whatnot. And it turns out the voids are very hungry for light, that they just feed on it. So despite the fact that it's supposed to be a thing where the void is the subservient role, because this one was so smart, it was actually commanding him where it wanted to go. And as such, they got in trouble for stealing jewelry, because the void likes the taste of the light as it reflects off the jewels. And because of their committing the crime of stealing jewelry, he was basically sentenced to into that falling for all eternity thing, which Ex Nihilo rescued him from. So that explains all of that. Anyway, she thinks that the only way in order to control it, because the person who put away Abyss in the first place was a dial user, is via the dial. So she is currently in superhero form trying to use her magic on it as well. And he knows that isn't going to work. Abyss is driven mad and is starving based off of the hundreds of thousands of years that it has been unable to feed. So he's basically just pleading with Nelson, hey, you still have a dial, you can help me. Let's strike a deal here. And he's like, my dial isn't working. I would need Manto. And I was like, I can take you right to her. We got to go now, though. And he's like, all right, but I'm not a hero. And he's like, well, nobody knows you're not a hero. Just pretend to be one. So he puts on some of Manto's outfits and goes in as Rescue Jack, starts beating up all the thugs that are hanging out there. And they get in, and he sees this elderly woman tied to a chair. And he's like, oh, ma'am, don't worry, I can rescue you. And as she looks up, he recognizes that it's actually Manto. This is what she actually looks like when she's not transformed. So she gets her outfit back on. They fight through a few more thugs. And we see that Abyss, who's in the geological exhibit, Ex Nihilo is trying to control it, trying to see it. And Abyss shows her that Squid has betrayed her and is freeing Manto and Nelson. So he allows her to teleport through Abyss just to attack Squid. And so final page is her transformed in her hero thing, confronting Squid, calling him a traitor. I mean, it's dense. I can't even begin to say how much they packed into this issue, and I skimmed over a lot of that. I know it sounds like I went in hard, but I skimmed a lot of it. So it's good. It's very good. And now I understand each of the players. I understand, because that was the thing, is that in all the previous issues, I was concerned. I didn't know like what was a name half the time, what was like a group, what was one person or the other, because some people like spoke in the third person. Ex Nihilo especially like referred to herself in the third person. It was very confusing. But now I've got the layout. I know where everything is, and nothing is really too, shocking. I feel like I understood it going into it as well, but honestly, I am so happy for this issue just to be able to sort out, okay, here's where everything is, and I'm understanding it now. Now I can really just focus on the plot more so than the, wait, hold on, what's going on? So overall, I'd say I really like the lore that this sets up. Art-wise, it's also good. Mateus Santolucci's been doing great on this the whole time. So I would probably put this at, I'd give this issue an 8. But I think the series as a whole has jumped in quality significantly now that I am very firmly grasped on what's going on. So I think we have the 0 issue next. This one did get a 0 issue, but after that we will get right back on track. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this August 1st, 2012. And I gotta be honest, I'm a little bit surprised how many of those were arc enders. Like, I know that typically writers nowadays write for the trade, which on average has 6 issues, but I think like at least 80% of the books I read were the ends of arcs, which, I mean, I guess when everything started at the same time, it makes sense they would end at the same time, but it just seems weird to me that you could be reading 10 different books a week and all of them would be ending their stories at the same time. I don't know. Struck me as weird. I'm also just making conversation in order to pad out the runtime a little bit because I'm a little bit under my target length. How are you? That's good. Anyway, let's talk about comics coming out next week. Next week, August 8th, 2012, we have 13 comics, including the number 12 issues of Batgirl, Batman, Batman and Robin, Superboy, Deathstroke, Grifter, Suicide Squad, Legion Lost, Demon Knights, Frankenstein, and Resurrection Man. Additionally, we have the number 4 issue of The Ravagers and the number 6 penultimate issue of Night Force. I'm so surprised they kept Batman and Batman and Robin running on the same week. I definitely thought they would have split those up by now. But hey, I guess when every single week has like 3 Bat books to it, you can only split them up so far. Anyway, if you have any thoughts on the books that I talked about today, going to be talking about next week, or any book ever, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. That is all one word, at DC Comics Podcast. Use the hashtag New52, or don't. I'm tired of this bit now. Additionally, we have a Patreon you can give money to. That is My Old Fuzz TV. For as low as $1, you can get less stuff than if you donate $5, which you can get less stuff if you donate $10. What I'm saying here is donate $100. You get the most stuff. That'll do it for me, though. Thank you very much for watching, listening, or however it is you consume this podcast. And, yeah, I hope to see you here next week. Always try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.